To work effectively, ships and their crews must work safely. Developing a safety culture will prevent personal injuries on board ships. It's not only the safe and smart way to operate, it's also mandatory. Running a safe ship is important to those who own it, to those who man it, and to those who entrust it with their cargo. It's also an important new emphasis of the revised STCW Convention and the ISM Code. Specifically, the ISM Code requires ship owners and managers to develop a safety management system that will provide for safe practices in ship operation, establish safeguards against risk, and continuously improve safety management skills. In this program, we'll feature the insight and commentary of author Richard Bracken, whose book, Personal Injury Prevention, A Guide to Good Practice, sets out the basic steps in building a true safety culture on board ship.
The worst way to do it is just to put a set of manuals on board the ship and say, follow these procedures and everything will be fine, because take it from me, it won't be. What it really is about is giving the people on the ship the ownership of the procedures. Let them have a part of it. When you're developing the procedures, go around the ship with them, take the people on board and take them to show you what safe practice is. It's an evolving process.
Turn it on by flipping this switch here.
We'll identify the 6 items of personal protective equipment recommended for individual protection. We'll discuss the ways ships can prevent accidents and injuries before they happen. And we'll see examples of the safe use of onboard tools and equipment. How serious is the business of personal injury prevention? P&I clubs estimate that after cargo claims, personal injury and illness claims are their second largest category of claims registered, accounting for more than 1/3 of the total. To dramatize the seriousness of this issue, we're going to introduce you to a couple of characters that are not quite so serious, to contrast the good and the bad.
Now, safety schmakety. Come on.
No element of personal injury prevention is as crucial as what happens before the work even begins, work planning.
So, if you've got any questions about what you're supposed to be doing, come and see me, because it's all up here. I've done this 100 times before. I'll tell you, I've been on this ship and ships like it for years.
No matter how many times you've done it, you still need to plan it.
What's the plan?
Well, I'll tell you what. You don't know what to do today?
Am I going to paint? Am I going to sand? What am I going to do?
Well, then you're coming with me. I'll put you to work. All right? Forget this planning nonsense. It's all up here, lad.
Because as you know, last time we had a problem.
Effective planning starts at the top. The daily work planning meeting attended by senior officers, the shipboard safety officer, and the bosun assigns roles and responsibilities. The aim of the planning team is to organize the work before doing the work, with safety firmly in mind.
But I just want to make sure that all the guys are wearing either earplugs or the earmuffs.
Yeah.
That's the biggest message about work planning is it's a stepping back. What are we going to do? What tasks are we going to undertake? And what factors have we got to consider?
Daily work planning involves job allocation, taking into account individual skills, equipment needs, interdepartmental coordination, job procedures, and preparing a daily work plan. One of the very best reasons for planning your work ahead of time is how hard it is to plan it on the spot. Lack of planning allows room for sloppiness, confusion, accidents, and of course, injuries.
Well-planned way.
A good crew follows the daily work planning meeting with a more detailed departmental meeting to go over specifics.
You have some kind of a pan underneath to catch all the excess fuel and so forth?
The departmental meeting deals in detail with correct procedures, staff, and safety concerns. And in the case of work that might be especially hazardous, many ships use the Permit to Work system. This system requires written procedures and authorization for potentially hazardous tasks like hot work, electrical maintenance, work aloft or overside, and entry into enclosed spaces.
Essentially, this switchboard will kill you. If we open this panel, put our hands in there, it's just going to come back and find out where do we take the body. You don't get second chances with 440-volt power systems. So that's a classic environment where I would want to see a permit-to-work system.
Work planning and permit-to-work systems are based on good communication, team input, and the use of daily work plans and written authorizations. A few minutes spent planning add focus and discipline to the work that follows.
It's a structured way of doing it, and it makes the people at the top actually step back and think about the job as well. Instead of the chief engineer just saying, okay, boys, go down and work on the main switchboard, and then going off and doing something else. It focuses his mind, and thus everybody else in his team, that we've got to take into account the true safety implications.
Personal injury prevention begins with personal protective equipment. In this segment, we'll talk about safety gear and how and when to use it.
Are you ready?
Ready. Okay, I'm going to go get my safety equipment. I'm going to get my gloves.
We don't need gloves.
Well, what about my coveralls?
We don't need coveralls.
I'm going to need my safety goggles.
No goggles.
What about my helmet?
No. Safety schmakety. Come on. Well, what are you waiting for?
We're all familiar with personal protective equipment, sometimes too familiar. We often take it for granted or use it improperly. In personal protective equipment, PPE, there are 6 absolute essentials: boiler suits or coveralls, steel toe-capped safety shoes, safety helmets or hard hats, ear protection, gloves, and goggles.
It's not enough to simply say, here's a boiler suit and a hard hat, go away and wear it. There's a way to wear these things, you know, and there's a way that you can jeopardize your safety by thinking you're wearing equipment that's going to help you, and actually it could be doing you more harm than good.
Boiler suits provide protection from dirt, oils, and potential hazards, and at the very least, they keep clothing clean and protected. They should be fastened at the neck and wrist and be washed and repaired when they become dirty or damaged. Boiler suits should be worn at all times when working outside the living areas of the accommodation. Safety shoes must have steel toe caps for protection from impact injuries, have anti-slip soles, and be oil and chemical resistant in case of spills. Use steel toe rubber boots for wet work. Safety shoes should be worn any time you're working outside the accommodation, including work in galleys, stores, and refrigeration spaces. Safety helmets should be worn whenever you're outside the accommodation, but as a minimum during mooring, at emergency stations, during storing and lifting operations, cargo and bunkering operations, and for all engine room maintenance.
There's the physical hard hat, there's the inlaid sort of lining and structure of the hat. We've got helmet-mounted ear defenders, chin straps, all these parts of it. Alone, without the webbing, it's a hazard. It's no different to just wearing a piece of plastic on top of your head.
Safety helmets provide personal protection from bumps, knocks, and falling objects. It's not just the plastic, it's the webbing, too. Ear protection should always be worn near loud machinery, in engine rooms, hydraulic rooms, fan and pump rooms, and in compressor, refrigeration, and crane spaces.
As a rule of thumb, if you can't converse normally, like in this environment, then you should be wearing ear protection.
One of the most common injuries in the maritime industry is hearing loss. The solution is ear protection, preferably built into the safety helmet itself. Leather palm gloves are good for general duty work around the ship. Use approved rubber gloves when working with chemicals, heat-resistant gloves or gauntlets for hot work, and approved insulated rubber gloves for electrical work. Gloves should be worn whenever their use will help prevent injury. Remember, there are different types of gloves suitable for different tasks. Goggles or other approved eye protection is essential when operating machine tools, handling chemicals, welding, pressure washing, grinding, chipping, and blasting. Approved eye protection is mandatory whenever there's a risk of injury to the eyes. Be aware that there are hazards in places you might not be looking for them, such as mooring and anchoring operations. To review then, there are 6 items of personal protective equipment that should be mandatory. Boiler suits, steel toe cap safety shoes, safety helmets, ear protection, gloves, and goggles. There's also plenty of specialized safety equipment you should be familiar with and know how to use as the job at hand requires, including safety harnesses and belts, flotation aids, heat-resistant clothing, dust masks and respirators, fire suits, and chemical suits.
Immediately we can see that they're telling us hard hats is a priority area. We want hard hats here. We want people wearing gloves, and we want people wearing safety footwear, anti-slip soles, steel toe caps, protective footwear.
Wearing personal protective equipment is a good start, but communicating and sharing information about safety will actually help you anticipate and prevent accidents and injuries before they occur. Going beyond simple protection is called building a safety culture. That's next. Safety isn't simply a set of rules and regulations, or even the equipment we just looked at. It's a continuous process where we look to learn and improve. We call it building a safety culture, and it's a far cry from business as usual and the way things used to be.
You think you've got things hard, mate? I'll tell you. I've got a lot harder work than this ship. I had waves crashing against the deck, 30, 40 feet high.
You won't be able to change anything on board ship unless you can change individual behaviors. That may take some work.
So you've got it easy. This is an easy life for you. You've never had it easier than this. I've worked hard all my life. Roll on.
The basis for any safety culture is individual responsibility and accountability, personal hygiene, cleanliness, pride in yourself and your ship. Most mariners will tell you there's a relationship between good housekeeping on board ship and ship safety. Consider this fact. 45% of all personal injuries on board ship are simple slips and falls. Building a safety culture requires a team effort, with each and every individual, officer or crewman, working towards the same goal.
It's not do it this way and everything will be okay. If somebody, a junior officer comes up to you or a crew member comes up to you and says, I think we could help if we changed it this way, don't dismiss them out of hand. The procedures say this is what we do. Listen to what they're saying, because these guys do it every day of their working life, and they probably know a damn sight more about it than we do writing down rules.
A safety culture begins with commitment from the very top of the shipping organization. It's a 4-step process of continuous improvement and corrective action, driven by the senior officers and the designated safety officer.
Always make sure when you're chipping it.
Step 1 is identifying the size of the problem. Talk about safety, near misses, accidents, hazards. Work together to get a sense of what works and what doesn't.
However you do that, whether you do it in terms of lost time injuries, whether you do it in terms of accidents on board ship, whatever method you use, you have to establish what size of problem you have and what particular problems you're facing.
Step 2 is providing the correct equipment and training. We've identified the correct personal protective equipment. Get it, learn it, and use it.
It's not just give them the equipment and say, go away and wear this equipment. It's showing people how to wear it, when to use it, when's the right place for a certain type of glove, or when should you wear your ear defenders, educating people. Education and training has to be the key.
Step 3 is making safety a priority. Actions speak louder than words. When safety is a priority aboard ship, the culture will change.
It becomes a natural progression. It's not stop, what should I think about safety? You know, what factors should I now consider? After a while, it just becomes second nature. It's automatic.
Step 4 is developing a reporting system. Continuous improvement is based on good communication, sorting out what works and what doesn't, and taking corrective action.
It's getting a picture of what's happening on board the ship. So, near-miss, accident reporting. An accident is any unforeseen incident. It doesn't necessarily result in an injury. So there's various stages. There's the near-miss, there's the accident, there's the injury, and still, far too often, fatality.
Safety is everybody's concern, every day. It begins with each of us individually, yet it affects the welfare of all of us. Building a safety culture saves lives and saves property. It begins with good work planning and the proper use of personal protective equipment. If you're conscious of safety, you'll improve working conditions, and your whole ship will benefit. The transfer of fuel oil into a vessel, bunkering, requires diligence, safety consciousness, and proper procedures. Safe bunkering is the product of good communication, proper crew training, and compliance with international, federal, and local laws. The safe bunkering procedures you'll see presented here come from those three sources: internationally accepted maritime practices, the United States Coast Guard regulations, and the brand new guidelines of a local regulator, the Washington State Office of Marine Safety. You'll see and hear a collection of transfer tips, timely reminders throughout the program on handling oil safely. You'll see and hear safe procedures listed, explained, and illustrated. And you'll see and hear the state-of-the-art in marine safety, Washington State's new bunkering guidelines.
Now, the deck roving watch is...
Maritime safety is a people process. Virtually every marine accident or oil spill is the result of human error. It's well-trained people working conscientiously together that make safe seamanship a reality.
Since the enactment of the Oil Pollution Act of '90, there's been a tremendous consciousness, on the part of all, both the regulators and the customers, being our mariners, to the fact that no longer will we tolerate having oil going into our environment.
We're just going to have to watch these containment locations and make sure they don't fill up with rainwater.
Right.
A good bunkering operation begins with proper preparation. sharing key information, explaining correct procedures, establishing communication links, reviewing preloading plans, providing crew education and training.
Everybody who's involved in the training session should be told everything about the bunker operation, not only their own job, but they should be sitting there listening when the other person's job is being talked about, so they have a full understanding of the fact that communication in almost all operations is critical.
Team 1, Fire Team 1 from the ship inside of their area, we still have reports of 2 people missing.
A shipboard fire is among the most severe emergencies mariners can face. And if that fire erupts in port, officers and crews face added challenges. You have more resources to help fight the fire, but you also have new roles and new responsibilities.
We have crews coming up to assist. That's our only access.
Yeah, that's our only access. Just other side.
Fighting fires in port tests more than your knowledge of fire safety. This program is about the communications process, too. Both the ship and the shore want to put fires out quickly and safely, but sometimes they have different ideas about how to do it.
I think the captain, at this point in time, has to be aware that the firefighting resources from the local departments will be very, very anxious to help, but won't have much of an idea of how they can help.
You have a much better firefighting evolution if you can get the people on the ship to share their information with the people on the shore, and that's really a critical link.
Fire in port, the ship-shore interface, is in 4 parts: communicating effectively, the fire plan and its importance, the incident command system, and coordinating the ship-shore response to the fire.
There's not a whole lot of firemen that want to be a marine firefighter because they're not the friendliest fires that we can face.
Do you have a mate who can help him?
We'll follow the action in an actual ship-shore fire exercise and hear expert commentary from some of the key players, including the United States Coast Guard, which monitors fire safety practices in American ports.
I think it was Teddy Roosevelt that said that certainly in a crisis, the best decision is the right decision. The second best decision is the wrong decision, and the worst decision is no decision.
Our focus here is on the ship side of the ship-shore interface. What's different about fighting a fire when you're in port? What's the same? And what should you do? To work effectively, ships and their crews must work safely. Developing a safety culture will prevent personal injuries on board ships. It's not only the safe and smart way to operate, it's also mandatory. Running a safe ship is important to those who own it, to those who man it, and to those who entrust it with their cargo. It's also an important new emphasis of the revised STCW Convention and the ISM Code. Specifically, the ISM Code requires ship owners and managers to develop a safety management system that will provide for safe practices in ship operation, establish safeguards against risk, and continuously improve safety management skills. In this program, we'll feature the insight and commentary of author Richard Bracken, whose book, Personal Injury Prevention, A Guide to Good Practice, sets out the basic steps in building a true safety culture on board ship.
The worst way to do it is just to put a set of manuals on board the ship and say, follow these procedures and everything will be fine, because take it from me, it won't be. What it really is about is giving the people on the ship the ownership of the procedures. Let them have a part of it. When you're developing the procedures, go around the ship with them, take the people on board, and take them to show you what safe practice is. It's an evolving process.
Turn it on by flipping this switch here.
We'll identify the 6 items of personal protective equipment recommended for individual protection. We'll discuss the ways ships can prevent accidents and injuries before they happen, and we'll see examples of the safe use of onboard tools and equipment. How serious is the business of personal injury prevention? P&I clubs estimate that after cargo claims, personal injury and illness claims are their second largest category of claims registered, accounting for more than a third of the total. To dramatize the seriousness of this issue, we're going to introduce you to a couple of characters that are not quite so serious, to contrast the good and the bad.
Now, safety schmakety.
Come on. Safety at sea requires that we develop a safety culture, an environment where safety becomes an everyday priority and a process of continuous improvement. In this program, we're going to look at some of the everyday work practices that can be improved with a greater attention to personal safety and injury prevention. We'll highlight the use of the 6 essential pieces of personal protective equipment: boiler suits, steel-toed safety shoes, safety helmets, ear protection, gloves, and goggles. We'll also feature commentary by loss prevention expert Richard Bracken, whose book, Personal Injury Prevention, A Guide to Good Practice, is the best authority on the subject.
We can quantify costs, we can quantify the repatriation costs and all those types of things. But at the end of the day, people don't want to get hurt, and they don't want to let the side down. There's a right way and a wrong way to approach safety. We'll show you both, using a little humor to make the contrast more obvious.
Hey! Are you sleeping on the job?
Ships that succeed at building a safety culture do 4 things well. They identify their safety problems and concerns. They provide proper equipment and training. They make safety an everyday priority. And they develop reporting systems so they can improve and take corrective action. Let's take a look at how it works. Just like any business, the maritime industry faces both opportunities and challenges. Do more with less. Reduce costs without compromising quality. Operate more efficiently, but also more safely. And continue to improve our people. This little book is making a very big impact. It's called STCW 95, the International Convention on Standards of Training, Certification, and Watchkeeping for Seafarers. The STCW and its 1995 amendments are more than just rules. They're a closer focus on people, how we teach them, evaluate them, and keep track of their progress. STCW can be confusing. Different people have different interpretations. Our purpose here is to find some consensus and give you a common sense approach to complying with STCW on board your ship.
I think the key thing to remember is it sets a base standard, and that we want all of the professional mariners to comply with.
What the STCW code is asking for is a slight raising of the standards. They're going to find that the company has a little bit more responsibility to assure that certain things are happening on board a ship, assure that their crews aren't being overworked, assure that they're getting familiarization training, and that when they're on board that they are competent at the abilities that they are supposed to be competent at. It's asking for an extra level of oversight to make sure that things are operating okay.
None of the new regulations require that a vessel float in a sea of paper. They require that responsibility and authority be tracked, and how you do that is up to your own company procedures.
We've divided this program into 8 major areas of compliance with comments from company officials and the United States Coast Guard. Their port state control officers may examine you in any of these areas to make sure you're in compliance with STCW. So, let's get started. The first, we call it the human factor. No matter how much we inspect and improve our ships and our equipment, it's people, procedures, and practice that make for safe shipping. You may already be aware that over 80% of the incidents and accidents that occur aboard ship are due to human error. What you may not be aware of is a whole new set of regulations and procedures that focus in on this human factor. Among the most important of these is shipboard familiarization. Every ship is different. Good seafarers have always familiarized themselves with the specifics, equipment, procedures, duties. But now, shipboard familiarization is more than just good practice. It's the law.
You're seeing less and less regulations being written to modify and change machinery. They've recognized that we've modified machinery enough to the point to where it's rarely a problem in an incident. They're finding more that it's becoming the problem of the human factor, the person, or management policies, and that sort of thing.
The STCW code says companies must ensure that all seafarers who are newly joining a ship are given reasonable opportunity to become familiar with the shipboard equipment, procedures, and arrangements needed for proper performance of their duties before being assigned to those duties.
Familiarization is important in whichever vessel any crew member joins. All vessels are different, all have different procedures, all have different equipment. Even if two sister vessels, you will find it hard to believe, we have got 5 sister vessels of the same type, and all 5 of them may have differences in various equipment.
In this program, we're going to introduce you to the basics of shipboard familiarization, right out of the book, the STCW code, and demonstrated right here aboard ship. STCW requires that ships have written instructions for ship familiarization. Port State Control inspectors can and will ask to see these instructions. So, let's get started.
Hello, all crew. We have a fire in the forecastle. All crew fire at the muster at the station, please.
There is no greater safety concern at sea than fire. To protect our lives, our ships, and our cargoes from fire, we must do 3 things and do them well: prevention, preparation, and practice. In this program, we'll look at ways to improve fire safety at sea, especially ways to prepare and conduct fire drills. We'll also give you some practical advice from industry experts. You conduct fire drills at sea for your own safety, of course, but they're also required for certification, for insurance purposes, and by Port State Control.
Our emphasis on safety is on prevention, and certainly when you look at the catastrophic or potentially catastrophic outcome of a fire on a vessel, you've got to work at prevention, and then you have to work at training and education of how to respond to a fire.
Fire creates 3 hazards, any one of which can kill you. Flames and heat cause burns and damage property. Smoke and vapors suffocate people, and explosions kill and maim. Let's start with some of the fire basics. Fires need 3 things: ignition to start, oxygen to breathe, and fuel to consume and burn. Eliminate oxygen and fuel and you snuff fires out. Eliminate ignition and you keep fires from starting in the first place. That's prevention. Most fires aren't accidents. They're caused by carelessness or poor procedures. Welding and burning are obvious fire hazards, but prevention should also include attention to galley operations, oil transfer procedures, cargo storage, wiring and circuits, and especially careless smoking.
Life aboard ship can be strenuous, dangerous, and even hazardous. No matter how attentive we are to safety and prevention, injury and illness at sea are inevitable. People get sick and people get hurt at sea just as on land. This program explains and illustrates the basics of maritime medicine, from everyday to emergency.
You need to be able to hang this somehow above the patient's heart level so that the fluid will flow in and so that it will not just be backing up.
If you can't start an IV, there's a very good chance that person will die before you can get help to them. So having IV capability is very important.
You will see and hear hands-on demonstrations and commentary by doctors and other health professionals who specialize in maritime medicine. You can use this tape for instruction, for training, and for later reference.
And the bone that he's fractured, as we saw on X-ray, is between this knuckle and the wrist bones.
I think seeing something is always very valuable. And in medical school, they told us basically, see one, do one, teach one. So here's the opportunity to get partway down the pike and to see one. And hopefully it's something that can be quickly reviewed before you start an IV or suture if it's not been done recently or something that the medical officer is not comfortable doing. They can refresh their memory very quickly.
Part 1 of the program is preparation, the equipment and information you need. These segments are coded green for later reference. Part 2 of the program is assessment, from routine exams to checking key vital signs. These segments are coded yellow. Part 3 of the program is treatment, techniques, from suturing wounds to setting up IV lines. These segments are coded blue.
We've got a leak coming out of one of the hydraulic lines. There's quite a bit on deck. Unfortunately, some of it's gone to water. I got a real problem here.
It can be an environmental disaster, an operational disaster, and a business disaster, a pollution emergency. But if and when prevention fails, plenty of preparation and plenty of practice can make a world of difference. The very best crews are the ones prepared for the worst. And that's what this program is all about, pollution response. Make no mistake about it, preparing for the worst is more than good seamanship and good sense. It's also the law.
Check all the scuppers.
New regulations require shipping companies to guarantee a higher level of crew training and readiness than ever before. And part of that readiness is the ability to respond to a pollution emergency.
80% plus of all accidents are human error. We realize that if we can have a base level of training for all mariners internationally, that we can prevent, hopefully, a lot of those.
It does give me a lot of confidence to know that the crew can respond the way you would expect in case of an emergency situation.
In this program, we'll outline correct procedures for an effective oil spill response. We'll show you how to prepare and conduct effective drills or exercises, and we'll simulate a drill. And we'll get expert commentary from the people who enforce the rules.
Again, in an oil spill, once it's happened, what you want to do is mitigate the results of that or the circumstances. Anything that you can do beforehand, especially in training and coordination and pre-planning, is value added in the outcome.
Pollution could be air pollution, noise pollution, sound pollution, a lot of those things. But we're basically emphasizing the pollution which is related to MARPOL. And that is the pollution which is all due to oil, various types of oil, and pollution which is could be related to the garbage aspect of it.
Because of the catastrophic results of oil pollution, we're going to concentrate in this program on oil pollution response. This video presentation is an introduction to the United States Port State Control Program. In the next 20 minutes, you'll learn how the program works and what to expect during a Port State Control inspection. You'll follow a Coast Guard inspection team and find out what they're looking for. And you'll get expert advice from people who share your concern for the safety of our ships, crews, and ports.
The Port State Control Program is intended to elevate all shipping to the level that we believe the U.S. shipping fleet is at, and for the protection of those crews on those vessels, for the protection of U.S. ports, and for the protection of the United States environment.
Fully 90% of the maritime trade in United States ports now involves foreign flag vessels. Most of these ships operate safely, but changes in traditional ownership and registry of vessels have increased the number of ships posing a risk to U.S. ports.
You can get your certificate from a nation that doesn't have a single river, lake, or coastal lines. They'll issue whatever paperwork you need to get that business, but if they come to port states such as U.S., then we're going to be aggressive to ensure that they meet the standard that International Maritime Organization has agreed to.
The U.S. Port State Control Program identifies potentially high-risk foreign ships based on performance of owners, operators, classification societies, and flag states. These targeted vessels are then subject to boarding and inspection.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that the Port State Control is interested in is the safety aspects of the vessel.
The Coast Guard didn't make the rules. The maritime community did, for the safety of their people, their equipment, and their customers. It's safety and seamanship.